listening to the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Argentina. Yesterday. You know, the country down in South America, remember? They said no to the IMF back in 2000, 2001. I was down there in 2002, as I recall. And it was an economic disaster. Out of that disaster, all these co-ops started out. You know, businesses were just shutting their doors and saying, that's it, we're out of here. And the workers took them over. Argentina has, on a per capita basis, among the most co-ops in the world now. And they elected Cristina Fernandez, a relatively progressive politician, as their president. And the president before her had sold off the oil company. Basically, all the oil in Argentina had sold this off to a giant Spanish company. In fact, the president before her, he was sort of the Ronald Reagan of the day. And it was during the Reagan times. And he privatized the energy industry. He privatized he tried to privatize Social Security. He privatized the water supplies. He privatized the sewage. He privatized all kinds of things. And among them, oil. And Argentina has said, no, not so much. We're gonna take that thing back. YPF, which is the Argentinian company, is now going to buy 51% of itself back from the Spanish energy giant Repsol. Now, Congress is going to have to do this, and it looks like it's going to be passed. Cristina Fernandez, who is the president, says she's going to force this confrontation with Spain. Meanwhile, in Spain, the economic minister said this would turn Argentina into, his phrase, an international pariah, and he called it an aggressive act. Now, Argentina has a lot of oil. Problem, though, is that oil isn't owned by Argentina. As I mentioned, back during the Reagan era, Argentina's Reagan was a guy by the name of Carlos Menem. He privatized the nation's oil industry. He privatized their post office. Anyhow, their oil industry ended up being owned by a Spanish company, Repsol, and Argentina President Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner, I knew it was Cristina Kirchner is her actual name. My apologies. Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner pointed out, we are the only country in the Americas and nearly the world that doesn't control its own natural resources. This is the recuperation of the sovereignty of Argentina's natural resources, end quote. Spanish are all freaked out. They're calling it crazy. They're in Europe. Argentina's in South America. They both speak Spanish, but you got this. But the government of Spain, they're calling it hostile. They called it almost an act of war. New York bankster Boris Segura said it's running close to Chavez's model. So, Hugo Chavez nationalized his oil. He uses it to feed poor people and housing for poor people and medical care for everybody in Venezuela. Can't have that. Oil is supposed to make billionaires. The fact of the matter, in my opinion, is that every country should own its own oil. We should own our own oil. I mean, are the Saudis, they own their own oil. Are they like Chavez? Or Sarah Palin's Alaska, which takes money from their oil, distributes it to their citizens every year? Is Sarah Palin's Hugo Chavez because she was writing $2,000 checks to everybody? Argentina's President Kirchner is spot on. She should nationalize her nation's oil. Should have done it a long time ago. Instead of having to buy, right now, Argentina has to buy their own oil from a European company. We should be nationalizing our oil here, so we don't have to buy it back from British BP or Dutch Shell. Every nation should own its own natural resources. They should develop their own natural resources. Those natural resources are part of the Commonwealth, right, as in Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and the revenue from them should fund social programs like in Norway. They get a lot of oil. They sell that oil. What do they do with the money? It pays for their health care program, among other things. you know, I guess to our relief, one of the reasons America is not getting into this is because President Kirchner is not, Cristina Kirchner, Fernandez de Kirchner, is not nationalizing her oil away from an American company. Now, when Iran and Iraq and Venezuela, when they tried that, when they tried to take their oil away from ExxonMobil and ITT, ATT, whatever, no, it was let's see, it was ExxonMobil, Chevron, Standard, all those various companies. What happened? The CIA helped overthrow all of them. These were all three democratically elected governments, although in Venezuela, the coup was very short-lived. In fact, Louise and I were there that day. We were in Venezuela the day that they put Chavez under arrest. It was a very short-lived coup. But it was a coup by the elites. This was back in the 80s. It's time for the U.S. government to stop doing the bidding of transnational oil companies, including you and me paying the full cost of militarily protecting their shipping lanes and fighting wars in foreign countries to help them get more oil. And we should be considering nationalizing our own oil supplies and many of our other minerals for the benefit of we the people, instead of the benefit like people like ExxonMobil's Lee Raymond, who got a $400 million retirement bonus. Can you imagine? The day you get retired, the day you retire, this guy had already made millions and millions and millions of dollars. And he retires, and they say, here's a check for $400 million. Largest retirement in history. You know, the resources of a nation should be for the nation, not for the billionaires like ExxonMobil, Lee Raymond, the Koch brother company, stuff like that. It's time for us to seriously ask the question, you know, what is the commons in this country? Most Americans don't even, I shouldn't say most Americans don't understand the concept of the commons. That's where I was going with that. I think most Americans intuitively understand the concept of the commons. But what they don't get is that there has historically been a debate in the United States about where the commons begins and ends. And we've pretty much always figured that the commons is the police, the army, the fire department, the post office, the schools. It was Thomas Jefferson's radical idea that college was part of the commons. He started the University of Virginia as a free college. Abraham Lincoln expanded that by saying that we're going to give land, we're going to give federal land to states to build what are called land grant colleges, because they got grants from the federal government of land. We'll give you the land, you build a college, you got a state college. And there's dozens of them all over the country. Michigan State University was one of them, a land grant college. This was Abraham Lincoln's project. You look at most other countries, you can go to college for free. Not most other, not as in all, 190 some odd countries in the world, but most other developed countries, the other 30 or 40 countries that are the developed countries of the world, they're investing in their intellectual infrastructure. They own their own natural resources, or they very tightly control them. And they consider health care to be part of the commons. And Obamacare is like a small step in that direction. And what's really cool about it is that in 2014 to 2017, it gives the states the ability to do what they did in Canada, which is experiment with their own single-payer system, which Vermont is already down the road in doing. We need a conversation about the commons in this country. And they consider health care to be part of the commons. And Obamacare is like a small step in that direction. And what's really cool about it is that in 2014 to 2017, it gives the states the ability to do what they did in Canada, which is experiment with their own single-payer system, which Vermont is already down the road in doing. We need a conversation about the commons in this country.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program. This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And what's going on in Argentina might just spark that conversation. Should we nationalize our oil? Take it away from the Koch brothers, ExxonMobil? Hey, Tom, what's up?
Well, two things. I'm a little surprised I could find Ms. Lucas so agreeable on something. But the thing is, I applied for a bus driving job, right?
Mm-hmm.
And part of it is you've got to get a medical certificate.
Right.
And so I go down for this medical screening. And because of new DOT regulations, because my body mass index measures out at 35, I have to go through a sleep apnea study that they don't pay for, and it costs like $1,300.
Yikes. This is because you're a little bit overweight, you mean?
I've been working for a number of years here. I haven't had a job. It's a little hard for, come up with the money, but even if I could, it won't be in time for the classes that they're starting to see who they're going to hire and stuff.
Well, and beyond that, why do they care if a bus driver snores when he sleeps? Or if he stops breathing when he sleeps, for that matter,
well,
other than not wanting dead.
They won't get a good night's sleep, and they'll be tired when they go to work and stuff. But it's they also want to do a treadmill stress test, and
yeah.
Since I take a beta blocker, it's really hard to get my heart rate up to begin with. But
these are all reasons why we should have a national health care system.
Exactly.
I mean,
but the other thing I wanted to point out was I just thought it was ironic that the reason for taxes due today rather than yesterday is because of its District of Columbia Emancipation Day.
Oh, really? That was yesterday?
That was yesterday.
So yesterday was a federal holiday that nobody ever heard of, including me, and I live in the District of Columbia.
Applies to the D.C. area, and I think it's funny because apparently they want to emancipate you from your money, but
Well, yeah. I'd love to look into that because the District of Columbia was originally envisioned by the founders as they feminized Columbus's name and created a goddess. They thought America needs a goddess. We've got plenty of gods. We've got no goddesses. And the Roman Republic and the Greek Republic and the Greek democracy had goddesses. So they created this goddess, put her on top of the Capitol building. She's in front of, or in the symbols of all the various federal agencies. In fact, she so offended John Ashcroft over the Department of Justice that he covered up her breasts. Remember?
Yeah, I know.
And
I want to point out
they called her Columbia.
Just before I leave, because that's a great thing. But before I get cut off or whatever.
Sure.
Is that you realize Ralph Cramden's not getting that bus driving job now?
Yeah. There you go. If you're old enough to remember Ralph, you're absolutely right. Jackie Gleason.
Right. Take care.
Okay, thanks a lot for the call, Tom. Just to finish my riff about the District of Columbia, most people don't know this. The District of Columbia is named after the goddess. It is the district. I live in the District of the Goddess. And these guys were such idealists that they thought if somebody lives in the District of the Goddess and does the work, the sacred work of government, there should be absolutely no self-interest. And therefore, if you live in the District of the Goddess, you have no vote in Congress. We don't have any senators, and the one representative we have is purely an advisor. She can sit there and listen, but she can't, and I suppose she can speak, but she can't vote. Eleanor Holmes Norton. And so, because we live in the District of the Goddess, because we're doing the goddess's work, and the goddess is on top of the Capitol. I don't think most people even know America has a goddess.